Hello again, everybody. Welcome to 50 by 50. Whatever happened to the Harvard class of 1976, the bicentennial class? I'm a member of that class, I'm happy to say. And I'm even happier to say today I'm joined by my old friend, Mike Belmont. Hey, Mike, great to have you.
Great to be joining you this afternoon, Michael.
You're the first guy to show up in a tie, just, for the record, and a blue blazer.
Well, I'm still working, so I was seeing patients earlier today and might even see one or two after the time together.
Good for you. We're going to get into your career. Mike is an MD, a doctor, in Long out here in Long Island, right? You're not far from it.
I live on the North Shore of Long Island, but I work at NYU, so I'm calling you from Manhattan, from
Mike,
38th
that's my
Street and
hospital.
First Avenue. So there you go.
That's where I get all my medical care. Nobody told me about that you were there, so this is good. This is very good to know, particularly if things go badly for me.
Well,
Um,
hopefully it doesn't, but yeah, we'll be available should the need arise.
so you're going to laugh when I tell you what I've been thinking about. I've been thinking about, like, if I could go back to freshman year of Harvard. Um, I was a lacrosse player. I played for 2 years, and and I was a defenseman, and you were an exceptionally good defenseman, who had amazing stick work. I've still never seen anything like it to this day. And so, if I could go back, I would follow you around, Mike. I would find out when you were getting to practice. I would make sure I had a ball in my stick, and I just would try to imitate you. And for some reason, I wasn't smart enough to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
fair.
but you were amazing. And how did you learn all that?
Well, fair question, and imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So I'm glad you said that. But
For
it's kind of the 10,000 hour rule. I don't know if it by that time was 10,000 hours, but I started to play lacrosse when I was in high school. I always enjoyed playing football. So in high school, I played both football and lacrosse. But there was a spring, I guess, in seventh grade where the coaches would have prospective athletes to come join them. And you could go for baseball, you could go for track, or you could end up going for lacrosse. I thought maybe I'd do something in track, even though I was never too fast. But I sort of did well in the presidential test fitness and the standing broad jump. So I thought maybe I would do track. But somehow I ended up in a room with prospective lacrosse players, and some of them were football teammates. And a very persuasive guy spoke to us about what they call the Founders Game. It's the oldest North American sport, lacrosse. It was played by Native American Indians for centuries, both for socialization and, I guess, to become fit as it was required for their lifestyle. But anyway, that was seventh grade. And the first thing and when we first started, Michael, as you know, we had wood sticks.
Yes.
Jump ahead all these years ahead. Now everyone has plastic sticks, and stick skills are admittedly easier with the machine made, perfectly formed pockets in the plastic sticks. But one of the first things we were told was go find a wall, take that lacrosse stick, get a lacrosse ball, and throw it against what in my case ended up being sort of a handball court that was 100 yards from my house at my elementary school. So that's what I did from seventh grade through, I will admit, I'm even still doing it today because I enjoy it. But the way to have skill with the cross was to practice.
Yeah, for sure. Now you were smarter than me. You went to a place where if the ball got by you, you wouldn't have to chase it, right?
Well, it's true. It's best to do it in an enclosed place. So,
So listen, Mike, I'm no Mike Belmont as an athlete, but I did something eerily similar to this. When I was a kid growing up, I grew up in an apartment on the east side of Manhattan, and you'd sometimes go stir crazy. So I take a ball and a mitt and go out around the side of the apartment building and take a ball and just throw it and throw it and throw it. And I got into the habit of, like, throwing it really hard and sort of reacting. The only reason I bring it up, is because I call this my superpower. Now, whenever I'm incredibly good at catching things before they drop, Mike, to this
Okay, so
to this day, if something drop, and sometimes I do it, and my wife sort of notices, and I say, "Did you see that one? That one was pretty good." Catching something.
so
Now, if
that
I
skill
just
lingers.
that to lacrosse, Mike, I really could have been a contender, but I didn't. But I
So
have.
how did you move? How did you move from baseball to lacrosse, though?
Oh, geez. I never was really much of a baseball player. What happened to me was I was at Canterbury School. I played. I was an athlete. And in the spring, I really didn't have a sport. It was my first entrepreneurial effort. I started thirds tennis, and the creativity there were no tennis courts for us to play on. So I literally created a team so I didn't have to do anything else. And I got kind of that was a mistake. So the next year, the lacrosse coach came up to me. It was the second year of lacrosse that I got into it, and he said, "Hey, you should come play." That's all. I love the guy. That's all he had to say. And I ended up, playing with some. We had some pretty good teams, including with John Kiernan, who you know.
That's right.
And yeah, that's how I got into it. And I regret that I didn't, bear down more. I came out late to the freshman team. I just, my head wasn't in it anymore like it had been, which I regret. But the good news is I got to meet all you guys and be friends with many lacrosse
Right.
players. And you'll be happy to hear that this podcast is way weighted over heavily with lacrosse players. So just so you know. But
Fair enough.
but Mike, I want to talk to you. And I just recently spoke to Joel Feldman, your roommate at Harvard,
Yes.
and he went to Pittsburgh Law School. I believe you went to Pittsburgh Medical School. Is that right?
Yes, we were roommates for 3 years. That's
Yeah.
right.
Oh, you weren't so sick
Law
of him.
school.
You weren't so sick of him by then. You wanted to.
No, no, it went well enough in Cambridge. It made sense in Pittsburgh as well.
Yeah. So, when did you know you wanted to be a doctor?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I really do know the answer. It was 10th grade, and it was high school human. It was biology. I remember the guy's name. William Botcher was the teacher, and the real focus though was human physiology. It was a biology course in 10th grade, and I really quote unquote fell in love with it, understanding both at the organ level and then really at the level of the lock and key and notions of pathways of human biology really excited me. So by the time I arrived at Harvard, I knew I wanted to be pre-med, as many of us were. So I was a classic biology, microbiology major. And there was no doubt for me that that's what I wanted to do. Little bit of struggle getting the right grades, playing lax and taking organic chemistry and physics. But fortunately, got accepted to the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine, and been never looked back and never regretted. In my case, the decision to pursue
What,
medicine.
Mike? What did you expect when you came to Harvard, and was it actually anything like you expected?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, like a lot of us, I would to some degree have to divide it into the academic life and then sort of the social life. So the academics were maybe more than I expected. I was very happy with when I look back on it with the curriculum. I wasn't only studying the sciences. Some of my favorite courses was sort of a reading elective just in the house with two other guys and reading some American literature. Another course that I really loved was on socialism. Um, so I remember those two today as much as some of the biology courses. My favorite science course I took in my senior year at the medical school. So we had the opportunity to take electives as upperclassmen. So I took an immunology course at the medical school in I think it was the fall of our senior year, and I'm somewhat of an amateur immunologist. We can get into it later. I'm a rheumatologist with a special interest in autoimmune diseases, and it really places an emphasis on understanding immunology.
Yeah.
So I was very happy. And, I went there knowing that, Harvard was a place to go where you really wanted to accomplish on an academic basis. In terms of social life and lacrosse, I can even then bifurcate those. For me, lacrosse was satisfying. I wish we had made one of those NCAA tournaments in our junior or senior years, but yes, I think my best friends from my 4 years at Harvard were either my roommates or the guys that were teammates. Otherwise, social life, I think, was satisfactory. I arrived with someone that I had dated in my high school who went to BU, but we only dated for the first half of the freshman year. And after that, I guess I was kind of a free agent. Wouldn't say I was super successful during those 3.5 years with establishing, close relationship with the opposite gender during
Yeah,
those
that's
four
not my
years.
strong suit either, unfortunately. But I'm going to really surprise you, Mike, because you and I had a bunch of conversations, and you may not remember them, but I remember them, pretty clearly. And I would say they were, I would describe them as being with. Don't laugh now. Don't fall off your chair, okay?
Okay.
As being with Mike Belmont, the Marxist.
Oh.
Now, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I think so. Um, well, but time.
What I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to say is I think it was, it felt like more than a dalliance. That's what I mean, in college you try things on like clothes, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
try them on, but you really knew a lot about it, and you really argued it incredible. You were very articulate and very convincing, actually. And so, do you remember what that line of thinking was?
Well, it surprises me a little bit for you to characterize it as strongly held belief or complimentary to say that I made the argument well. Because I will have to say I've become more conservative as your hair is gray and it recedes. So um, and I was a little bit late to economics. I mean, I never took Ec 10. I didn't take really any economics courses. In my high school, I took sciences and I was interested in history, but less the humanities and not so much economics. So, but when I became familiar with Marxist ideas, I was ripe uh, for its adoption. And I will say now, I have now more embraced, Churchill's comment, something to the effect. I think it's he who said that, if you're not, liberal, read Marxist when you're young. You don't have any heart, and if you're not more conservative, read Republican when you're older. You have no brain. So at the time, I mean, I would say it now from 50 years ahead. If human nature was slightly different, two things would be required, I say now, for Marxism to be successful and outcompete the free market, the supply and demand free market, which is one, a greater abundance of the supply, and in the absence of abundance, having uh, less than we actually need. Uh, Matching that with human nature, I think that's where Marx sort of failed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Elon Musk is correct, and AI works, and none of us need to work, and there's an abundance, and the robots and the machines and the automation create an excess of food and water, and, healthy items um, for our diet, then maybe the distribution can be each according to its need. But I do remember familiarizing myself at some point in college with Marxism and thinking it was a good idea. But
Yeah, yeah.
I,
Well,
I'll have to admit now, Michael, I'm not an AOC fan or Bernie Sanders. I mean,
that's what I was wondering all these
yeah,
years.
no, I admire Bernie Sanders and and AOC and Mamdani, here in New York. But I would not characterize myself as a progressive Democrat
I,
or a
I could.
socialist
I
Democrat.
think in one of the reunion red books you said, "I'm not in favor of single payer healthcare," and I I saw that and I said, "Whoa, I guess Mike has changed."
That there you go. That was an insight to it. Yeah.
So
Well,
I
look, I did take that course in socialism, which sort of reminds me, there are benefits to planned economies, but one of them is in the absence of competition, um, there's less consumer choice by definition. So that with the socialists, they plan their economies for 5 years, and just to get, and if you build a computer, you can build one maybe it's as good as a Dell computer, and everyone can have access to that. But no one's trying to build the MacBook because it's all planned, and there's no reason to outcompete and build
right,
a better mousetrap.
right.
So when I apply that to medicine, or at least the healthcare industry, some of that applies as well, I think. Now, I do believe in sort of universal healthcare, but not necessarily in a one size fit all. I don't know that I believe in a single payer. I think there should be employer based options, but Medicare and Medicaid. And so I would like a system where everyone is insured, but it's not one size fit all. The only thing that butts up against is, um, equality. So the fact is, not everyone may have the same plan, but I'm not uncomfortable with that currently because that is the case. And the Affordable Care Act and the Obamacare Act, did include that because there was sort of the gold plan and the silver plan and the platinum plan. So a future state where everyone's insured, but if you have the means, your plan might actually have some frills and whistles that the others are not necessarily afforded. So that's what I argue for: universal coverage, but not a single plan.
Well, in your quote of Churchill as saying, "If you're still liberal as an older person, you don't have a brain." I put myself in that category because I'm actually as liberal as ever. And Mike, I had a liberal talk
Uh,
radio talk show for 6 years, so
oh, good for you. All right.
there weren't a lot of those anywhere. I think there were like five in the whole country at the time. But I'm curious. So when you because a lot of our classmates were doctors, a lot of our close friends turned out to be doctors. A lot of them also turned out to be surgeons. In my case, including Jeff Moley and Giles Whalen.
Yes.
But what I'm interested in your case, healthcare has changed so much in your lifetime. Was the medicine that you ultimately got to practice what you had hoped it would be when you were becoming a doctor? Did it live up to expectations, or was it kind of one headache after another?
Good question. So the quick and easy answer: no. I've been happy and satisfied, and I wouldn't say it's at any point was a major headache. And just to address the issue about surgery, every person that goes on to medical school will have a different experience. But for me, I didn't. I had taken this immunology course at Harvard, so I knew that was an area I was interested in. But it didn't necessarily mean that I would be a surgeon or any particular specialist. But bottom line, when you're in your third year, at least back then, but when you're in your third year, you take your clerkships, you get on the units, you get on the wards, you're actually seeing patients. And when I was exposed to surgery, um, it occurred to me that I would never be a preeminent or excellent surgeon. And even though he talked about my
Yeah,
skill with the
your
lacrosse,
hands, your stick handling.
exactly, I had soft hands to catch a football and to catch the lacrosse ball. But actually, there are two things to be a great surgeon. Well, three things. You have to be smart, know the biology and the physiology, which is my area of maximum interest. But you need to have great fine motor skills, and you have to be the kind of person that sees in 3Ds and knows how to think about an erector set and things like that. And
Hmm.
for me, I failed on the fine motor. I never felt so comfortable as other of my classmates, or as I now talk to surgeons, as the guys and girls that were great with the fine motor. And I sort of 3D about having your hands, in on the heart valve or finding the appendix,
Yeah.
and thinking about all the 3D wasn't really my forte. So for that reason, by the time I was a junior in medical school, I no longer wanted to be a surgeon.
Hmm.
And I ended up then emphasizing this interest in um, immunology and the role of genetics and cell expression and autoimmune diseases. And that's how what led me to become a rheumatologist. So also, what can happen is one of my earliest, I wouldn't call him a mentor, but when in medical school in that third year, when you're seeing patients, you are often um, guided by what we call attendings. And one of my first attendings, one was a cardiologist, but the other was a rheumatologist. This was in Pittsburgh, and he was very impressive to me. He knew his stuff. He interacted well with patients. He interacted well with the staff, the nursing staff, interacted well with the medical students. So that was a type of mentorship that led me to think about rheumatology.
And I imagine you've seen all the episodes of The Pit, right? About
Yes, yes, because it's not a legitimate facility in Pittsburgh, but it's
yeah,
um, hypothetically the Pit from Pittsburgh, and yeah, I really enjoyed the original ER, the
yeah,
Michael Crichton's derivative ER, but this is a slightly different version because, as you may know, each season is one full day. I like
yeah.
Noah Wiley. He was great in ER, and he's great in the Pit. So yes, that's one of my favorites streaming shows.
Yeah, the emergency room in Pittsburgh, in a first Pittsburgh hospital. Mike, did were there other mentors that did you have any mentors at Harvard? Did you have any? I mean, I know
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
maybe non-sports mentors. People that you really kind of had their hand on the rudder in terms of helping you forward.
Yeah, fair question. And I would say, unfortunately, no. I remember I did take a microbiology course, and I was impressed with that instructor, but maybe once had an after a lecture discussion with him. That's more my fault. I mean, I remember for many years I would do interviews for prospective Harvard applicants, and I sort of emphasized to them that they should take the opportunity to meet with faculty. Now that I'm a professor of medicine at NYU, you recognize that when someone has an interest and talent and are motivated, they can assist you with your, uh, for example, research. But I had the bad luck. I remember all of us were assigned a faculty. I don't know if they call them a faculty advisor, and they knew that I think maybe you would declare. I told them I was interested in medicine, but my mentor was like an entomologist. His expertise was on spiders, and even though I like science,
Oops.
what I really like is human science and human biology.
Yeah,
So the one I met with him one time, and we didn't really have a connection or a rapport. So
yeah.
I would have to say, unfortunately, I didn't really get mentorship until really I arrived at NYU for my fellowship. That's
What
really
was that conversation like? Spiders are really cool, Mike. You want to come out?
yeah, I don't even remember, but yeah, I definitely, he definitely thought they were cool. And I thought maybe one day a year on Halloween, but for me, the rest of the year, I'm not into spiders.
You're not afraid of spiders, though.
I'm
Did
not
you
afraid of them now,
don't
but
want to
they
scrub you?
don't
Yeah, yeah. It's too bad you
my
weren't
area of interest.
a comic book geek. You probably could have gotten into that.
Yeah,
But,
right. If
but
I was a Spider-Man.
so no mentors. I mean, I think maybe responsibility is probably should be shared there. But moving forward, um, I want you to define the terms for us a little bit. What exactly is a rheumatologist?
Yeah, happy to do that. Um, Rheumatism is a sort of more of a lay term than a scientific term, but it refers to joints and achiness in joints. That's rheumatism. We are rheumatologists, and we are a subspecialty of internal medicine. So, internal medicine providers are often general practitioners or do adult family medicine. But under internal medicine, people are very familiar with cardiology. You treat and study the heart, pulmonary medicine, the lung, nephrology, the kidney, allergy and immunology, hematology and oncology, blood and cancer. In rheumatology, we treat diseases that it's one or another way, affect the joint. The
Hmm.
most common affliction is osteoarthritis, which is essentially a age-related effect on joints, although there are environmental and genetic factors as well. But gout is another inflammatory arthritis where crystals of uric acid precipitate from the blood in a joint, and an intense reaction ensues where the joint, most commonly the big toe, becomes red hot like a tomato. My area of interest are a set of autoimmune rheumatic connective tissue diseases, where the immune system intended to protect us from infection goes awry and produces factors, often autoantibodies, that produce injury.
Mm.
So rheumatology spans everything we call soft tissue rheumatism, just getting carpal tunnel syndrome from using your keyboard too much, to osteoarthritis at the elderly age, to rheumatoid arthritis, which most of us that listen to this will probably be familiar. That's a chronic form of destructive arthritis, which is autoimmune. The one that I am most interested in has an acronym SLE, which stands for systemic lupus erythematosus, which is the prototypical autoimmune immune complex disease.
So I'm disappointed you're not a gout specialist because we could have a long
Uh,
conversation.
are you
Mike,
a gout sufferer?
I've had gout since I was 8 years old, which is really
Well,
unheard.
do you? Yeah, well, there's a thing called Lesch-Nyhan syndrome where you have a genetic defect in HGPRT, which is an enzyme which controls uric acid production. So if you had gout pre-adolescent, you wouldn't have that syndrome because they have it even this Lesch-Nyhan when they're an infant. They can even have some neurological problems, which clearly you don't have. But I wonder if you have a partial HGPRT deficiency. Are you on allopurinol or Xyloprim?
Yeah. I'm on allopurinol, but I I'm happy to talk about gout for the next hour, but I don't think
Fair enough.
you're very interested. But I am looking. Maybe you can connect me to a gout, a real gout specialist.
Oh, I
Because
can. NYU has preeminence, including in my area of lupus with my colleagues. But one area of super expertise is gout, and one of my colleagues is renowned and a world expert. He's Michael Pillinger. He's a Harvard grad, also Harvard undergraduate. He's probably 10, 15 years my junior. I'll definitely hook you up with him.
I've actually had gout all over my body, Mike. I've had it everywhere. I know it's supposed to be in the big toe, but I've had it anywhere. So I feel
Yeah,
like
it can be, and it,
I need to tell somebody about this.
it's very painful. It's one of the
Oh yeah, it
they
hurts.
teach, and they say it's so painful. Let's say it is the foot and the big toe that even a sheet on top of the foot is
Yeah,
too painful. So
yeah,
it's one of the most painful forms of arthritis
yeah.
known. So I'm
For me,
sorry
for
you suffer, but
it responds really well to medication for me,
yes, but it is treatable.
and always has. But Mike, so you became a specialist. Maybe that's the wrong word, but certainly an expert in lupus. And
Yes.
I think, from my perspective, it's very misunderstood. I can't tell you that I really know much about it, other than I think it's sexually transmitted, but I don't even know that. So tell me,
Sure.
tell us what you do with lupus, and also like why you got so interested in it.
Sure. And just quickly to clarify, it's not sexually transmitted, but it is a disease chiefly of women of childbearing age. So there's a gender predisposition. So 90% of all lupus patients are women between 15 and 40. So it's basically these are women of childbearing age. Now there's the exceptions. 10% are men and can be either younger men or women or older persons.
Hmm.
My pathway to having this as an area of concentration, it begins with that immunology course at Harvard when I was a senior. Vanessa Rath gave one of the lectures. He went on to win the Nobel Prize
Oh my God.
in 1980, and I was taking that course in 1972. No, 1975, our senior year. So in the
Sure.
fall of 75, but he was a brilliant person and he was studying MHC, which are every human cell, all mammalian cells have markers that identify the uniqueness of the person. So he was describing those markers. But that was fascinating to me. During that course, I learned about a term of art. I don't speak Latin, but as a physician, you learn a little Latin. It's called horror autotoxicus. It's the horror of auto injury. So lupus is an autoimmune disease. There are autoantibodies, and Paul Ehrlich in 1904 described this entity of horror autotoxicus. He was the first immunologist to say the benefit of an immune system in a mammal is to protect you from bacteria and viruses and fungi and parasites. But the yin and yang of that is if you lose tolerance, you can have autoimmunity. So he called that horror autotoxicus. So I heard of that in 1976. Then I went to medical school, and in my senior year, I took an elective at the NIH, National Institutes of Health. It was 6 weeks, and 2 weeks were lupus, 2 weeks were on vasculitides, and 2 weeks were on immunodeficiencies. But I learned much about lupus and lupus attacking the kidney in that period in medical school. Parenthetically, one of the NIH scientists who interacted with our medical students was Tony Fauci.
Oh, wow.
This was 1980, 3 years before the HIV pandemic, and he was in the Institute for Allergy and Immunology and Infectious Diseases, but he was also studying a rheumatic autoimmune disease called Wegener's granulomatosis. He gets credit for bringing a very effective treatment to that condition, and all of that predates his preeminence as a virologist and HIV.
And most people, of course, know him from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right, leaping ahead. Although in
Yeah,
the medical community, he was held in high regard because
yeah.
of his work with HIV, and then unfortunately, and then he was highly regarded for his knowledge about COVID. And then I'm not here to talk about politics, but then he got unfortunately caught up in the modern American politics. One other point to make about medicine and that whole experience, he gets credit for bringing a drug to treat Wegener's granulomatosis in 1980. It's an autoimmune disease, can destroy the lung and the kidney. It's very serious. Prior to certain treatments, it had a 90% fatality. A few decades before this, steroids did change the outcome, but still 50% would be fatal within a decade. And he brought cyclophosphamide, Dr. Fauci did at the NIH. That disease was called Wegener's granulomatosis. This was 1980, and Dr. Wegener described this in like the 1950s or 60s. Friedrich Wegener died in like 1989. I'm telling you stories from 1980. In 1991, 2 years posthumously, it came to light that he was a member of the Nazi Party, and he was probably involved in crimes against humanity because he was a very smart medical clinician scientist. But he did use concentration camp occupants, for his science. I don't know that he did anything directly malicious, but it's a violation of human rights to force, like in the modern world, like prisoners. You have special groups that are protected from aggressive science because they can be manipulated. So anyway, that's just an example where he had to surrender his eponym. So that disease, Wegener's granulomatosis, is now has a different name, granulomatosis polyangiitis, because he's no longer
he's been canceled. Mike, I would suggest that you not do that in your practice.
Right. Well, we have IRBs now, so anytime you want to do an investigation, the Institutional Review Board has to vet it and be sure that you're not taking advantage. And again, there are like certain special
Sure.
populations where they're unlikely to sign off, except for special circumstances.
So, Mike,
But moving back to my
yeah,
interest in lupus, I'll just share that
please.
when I came to NYU for fellowship training in 1983, NYU has one of the original dedicated clinics for the diagnosis and management of lupus. We think it's been around since the 1950s, and I arrived here at NYU in 1983, and I've had the privilege of sort of being the director of that clinic since 1989. So that's how I arrived with this special area of concentration.
So you're still doing that.
Yeah, it's Tuesday mornings. It it's in Bellevue, so that's a safety net hospital. So this will warm your liberal tendencies because Bellevue takes all patients regardless of the ability to pay. So New York State is generous with Medicaid, so most patients will be awarded Medicaid. But we even have the sort of illustrative story, which is rare, but it is the case. Some people get off the plane at LaGuardia or JFK and arrive at Bellevue and have one or another disease. And one example over these 40 years has been lupus. And Bellevue will provide them the necessary care. So I'm supervising like 4 fellows and a junior faculty member, and we see about 25 patients every week. And I see an equal number in my School of Medicine practice. So I'm employed by the School of Medicine, but one of my jobs is this clinic where I am every Tuesday morning, and then half of the balance of the rest of the week I'm in a faculty group practice. And that's why I'm dressed the way I am, because I see patients when they're admitted to the hospital or when they come to these clinics.
Yes, you do look like a Harvard freshman in 1950,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
very,
Yeah.
very snappy. So I know from one of your things you put in your red book bios one year you mentioned how I think disappointed is the right word that I might missay it, but hydro
Hydroxychloroquine, yeah.
Hydroxychloroquine had become stigmatized because Trump suggested, I think he suggested people drink it during the pandemic or something like that, something along those lines. But why was that so unsettling for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, the infiltration of politics into good science and healthcare, I think, is problematic. And yeah, and I think partly what Trump had said something about drinking bleach, because in the tube, bleach would eliminate the COVID virus, but he was sort of ridiculed because, but if you drink bleach, you'll also destroy your lungs.
You
But
also
when it came to hydroxychloroquine,
yeah.
there was. This is often the case when you COVID's a virus. You can culture. You can take different types of cells, human cells or human primate cells, a petri dish. You can transfect them with the virus, and then you can pour on a material that you think will kill the virus. And in that kind of setting, we call that in vitro, in contrast to in vivo, which is inside the body. In vitro, hydroxychloroquine does kill the virus. And there was some original data, and that's still the case. So, but it's a leap to go from that and saying if you administer hydroxychloroquine to a human being, you'll eliminate the virus. There are things that are called like bioavailability. You have to get enough of the medication from the capsule through the digestive system into the blood. Then it has to arrive where the virus is. Generally, in this case, you're worried about COVID in the lung. And I will tell you, when it's all said and done, hydroxychloroquine is likely to be ineffective in treating COVID because even though it works in vitro, the reality is it's not going to work in vivo. The fact is, I was the principal investigator in what was called a PrEP trial, which then gets into the difference between PrEP and PEP. But there are pre-exposure approaches and post-exposure approaches. And again, the audience may be familiar or not with like HIV infection. So persons who engage in high-risk conduct who want to avoid HIV, they can either take a medication after they have engaged in that conduct, that's called post-exposure prophylaxis, or they can take PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, which means on a daily or a monthly basis, they're taking a drug that kills the virus as soon as it's encountered. I did that trial at NYU with hydroxychloroquine. We were concerned about the staff in the intensive care unit because all these patients were coming in. This is, March, April, and May of 2020 with very severe COVID, with COVID pneumonia. Their secretions were filled with the virus. And we were concerned that our ICU staff, doctors and nurses and anesthesiologists and respiratory therapists, might be exposed. And that was before we had therapeutics. So we did a trial where we gave them hydroxychloroquine every day during the time they were on the ICU service. Now, I will tell you it was a negative study, but we only enrolled about 80 staff. The numbers were too small to show anything. So it was a negative study. But
negative, Mike, negative meaning that it didn't work.
We didn't show. The hypothesis was and we didn't randomize it, so it would have been problematic to analyze it. But the hypothesis was if staff on a pre-exposure basis took hydroxychloroquine every day, if they were exposed to HIV, they wouldn't end up sick enough to no longer be able to work, and they would have to be admitted to the hospital and require oxygen or an ventilator. So that was our hypothesis. When you say it's a negative study, we weren't able to show that benefit. But I would just confess the numbers were too small to show the benefit. So it's negative with explanation. But bottom line, what I didn't like was it got politicized, and certain politicians, Trump, and then some doctors without good evidence were saying, well, everyone should take it either before, during, or after. And it gets, and then the public at large have problems deciding what they really should do. Then another wrinkle was these patients who got hydroxychloroquine, because there were some studies done, hospitalized patients, which again were negative, were very sick, and some of them were having serious cardiac events. And even to this day, it's unclear whether hydroxychloroquine contributed to that, because hydroxychloroquine does have some effects on the heart that could lead to some arrhythmias. If you want my opinion, it's probably not a true causation. But it's just what became frustrating to me was the politicization of this issue, and it interferes. Science is hard enough to do correctly and get the correct answers. But when you add the politics, it's an overlay that can spoil the effort.
One thing I wanted to ask you, you and some of our, probably actually many of our peers, some of your doctor friends went into academic medicine as you did. So it strikes me, I mean, there are other examples of this, but you go into academic medicine, it seems like you kind of have the best of several different worlds. One is that you're hands-on with the patients. You're doing you're working with the skills you have and what you've learned, but you're also teaching people how to do it. And you're, like you said, you're a professor. And I'm wondering, I'm sure you had opportunities to go into private practice or other, manifestations of being a doctor. Did you ever, what do you like about being a professor? And did you ever think about, well, maybe I'll stop doing this?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, no, I've not really had regrets. And like you say, you can go into private practice, you can join pharmaceutical companies and do their clinical trials. But what I enjoy about this is what you said. I see patients on a regular basis. The advantage of, I like to do, I'm a clinician scientist. I don't really do bench work, but I collaborate with scientists at NYU that actually do, we call it wet work. They do it at the bench. All my
research, right? Research, you mean?
Yeah, so there's research, but the wet research is at the bench. My research is what we call clinical research. It's sort of at the other end. So we'll have a database with 1,600 patients, and we can query the database and ask a question. Does hydroxychloroquine prevent deforming arthritis after 10 years of use? So that's the kind of some of the science I do. The other thing I like about academics and having to do the teaching is it provides and it emphasizes the need for lifelong learning. So you can go into private practice and you can sort of keep up, but no one's holding your feet to the fire. Um, More and more, my generation, our age group at Harvard, we've been grandfathered in for many of these recertifications, but a lot of you're familiar with continuing medical education credits, and a lot of professions have that. But to be board certified, you have to have the training and pass an exam. Now you have to pass that exam like every 10 years if you want to remain board certified. I'm exempted from that because this process of recertification only began basically in graduates of medical school like 1990. But there's no way I would be able to supervise a clinic and diagnose and manage lupus and other related complicated diseases if I didn't keep up.
Sure.
So it keeps me, relevant. And there are, not surprising to you, if there are diseases that were not, that were undiagnosed or weren't in the literature. My specialty when I train, so I have to continuously keep abreast. So I've had a subscription to the New England Journal of Medicine since 1980 when I finished medical school, and I do check that out every week to try and keep current.
To make sure it doesn't get past you. So you do not sound like you are going to stop. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, well, I should clarify. At one point I had an administrative job. So, along with everything we've discussed, I've been a hospital executive or a hospital administrator. I did surrender that in January of 2024, and that was interesting. I worked alongside some of the senior leadership at NYU, which really transformed NYU into a preeminent medical school. We had this dean, Robert Grossman, who took us from, well-regarded New York City institution to sort of a top 10 medical school, and I learned things about high reliability organizations and their 5 principles and avoiding harm and zero harm, adopted from nuclear industry and aviation industry and space exploration industries, and sort of what Toyota leaned on to become one of number one automobile maker at one point. So I did give that up 2 years ago. But in terms of what I've excitedly spoken to you about today, I haven't. There's no succession plan. I'm going to do it. My wife says, I'll die at work. I would like to spend a little more time with her, and I got 3 sons, two of whom are married, pending grandchildren, hopefully sooner than later. So I would like to have some more discretionary time to travel and spend even more time with them. But no, I've not created the plan yet. And this also relies on, good physical and mental health, Michael. If
Yeah, of course.
something goes wrong, if something goes wrong physically or mentally, you may be forced into retirement.
And Mike, you want to make sure to take good care of your immune system. I don't know if anyone's,
That's it. Yep.
physician, heal thyself. Is it true you still play lacrosse?
It is true.
That's
I
incredible.
mean, there's a caveat. It's old man lacrosse, so it's age brackets. So I became aware of this about like 2 or 3 years before the pandemic, like 2016. Turns out there are 3 major tournaments and there are minor tournaments. The 3 major are in Lake Placid, New York, in Vail, Colorado, and in Fort Lauderdale. And 2 of them are in the early summer and one's in January. The Fort Lauderdale's in January. And I've been doing that since 2016. And I started playing like in 50 plus. So there's a 50 plus team. In other words, if you're under 50, you can't be on it. Any age over 50, you can be on that team. But they're mostly groups within a day. There's a 50 team, a 60 team, 65, and now there's even a 70. And there are about 4 or 5, 6 teams. There are tournaments in Hawaii, which I haven't been to, and there are others around the country. But I play for a team. The name is Grateful Undead. That's the name. We have great swag.
That's hopeful. Yeah.
Although, and then 3 years ago, I now also, but I can you can play in more than one age group. I also play for the Creaky Crimson, so those are half of them are Harvard alums. Um, and 2 years ago, I found a pickup game. I live on the North Shore of Long Island, in Great Neck, and in Cold Spring Harbor, which is about 15 miles away. There's a pickup game Sunday mornings on the turf field at Cold Spring Harbor, which actually is not age restricted. We have, guys that are 30, 40, 56. There's a 74-year-old that was an All-American at Hofstra. I'm the next oldest. There was a guy that played at Hobart who's about 68. There's a guy who played at Notre Dame who's about 66, and then a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds. So it's been successful, but I did pop my Achilles
Oh,
4 years ago, so I had that repaired. But I was able to get back on the field within 6 months. So kudos to my orthopedic surgeon.
so you popped your Achilles, and by age 70, you were back on the field.
That is true. Yeah, I was in Vail, popped it at the end of July, and by January was playing in Fort Lauderdale. Now
So
again, Michael, these are guys that are 60 and 70, so you can imagine the pace. There's no, the physical. I mean, you can check, but there's no. You're
it's
not
different.
supposed to be
But here,
physical other
here
than.
I have to ask this, Mike, on behalf of all our classmates. Can you actually still run?
Well, you know what? The good thing about me is I was never really that fast.
It's a yes or no
So
answer, Mike.
yeah, so I run at a pace that's great for this age group, and my stamina is acceptable. But um, but I think the saving grace for me is I'm not pulling any hammies. For me, the equation is, well, if I was like Bruce Bruckman, who ran like a thoroughbred, I'd be more worried. But I was more of a plotter, so
Bruce
getting
Rupp,
by.
with a lot of pulled hamstrings because he was so fast, right?
He was a thoroughbred. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
elite runner.
Yeah, but Mike, that's incredible. You look like you're in good shape, and
Right.
you've lived a long and interesting life. But I still think you're a Marxist. But
At
I'm
heart, right?
I'm not going to mention that to any of our classmates. That you gave the best defense of communism I've ever heard in my life, and but now that you're older, things change, right? But listen, it's
Well,
we don't live far from each other, Mike. We should get
yes, you're
together.
on the East End, right?
Yeah, I'm in East Hampton, but in the meantime, I really look forward to seeing you at reunion. It'll be a lot of fun, and
Yeah,
seeing all the
some more
lacrosse.
catching up to do.
Okay, buddy, take
All
care.
right, signing off.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See you
I
at reunion.
enjoyed it, Michael. Good
Bye bye
job.
now.
Take care.